going. Whoop, something just fell. That's the best way to start a podcast. Hey guys, welcome to the second episode of Candy Corn Cinema. Today we're talking about the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen meeting the Avengers. Chris, what the hell are we doing here today?
We are living a childhood dream of mine and going over two films that deal with some of the greatest heroes ever. Unfortunately, let's face it, some of them were handled a little poorly, some of them were handled excellently, but you know what? At the end of the day, we love them both.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that we should start off with the one that people are probably wondering why the hell we decided to watch this movie again. So, The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. This was, and the reason we paired it up with the Avengers is this is basically the Avengers before the Avengers. They teamed up a bunch of basically literary superheroes into this crazy movie, what became Sean Connery's last movie. What were your initial thoughts even before coming in for a rewatch of this movie? Like what did you come in before holding on to this?
So I've always been biased. My first degree at university was in English, and I happened to also be focused in 19th century literature. So this
Right on the mark.
movie, even when it first came out, I was always interested in these characters. So I really loved the idea. And when I saw the film, I really loved it. It brought together great characters that I've enjoyed in literature, throughout my education. I was a dork as a kid and I read a lot. And so seeing my characters on screen was a big deal to me and portrayed by some fairly good names, Sean Connery notwithstanding. Obviously Sean Connery, you go, yeah.
He's great. Yeah.
And I love it. And I still do love it. And unfortunately, when we do a rewatch, I understand now even more what the problems are of it. And yet, I still sit there going, man, I wish there was a sequel.
Man, I think that I can see the problems with it, but they're only they're so small. Even now to me, comparison, I thought the visual effects would have held up a lot less. Like we were talking about The Mummy last week, and The Mummy, in hindsight, I thought The Mummy was yeah, okay, these visual effects aren't as good as I thought they were. League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, I think they hold up a lot better than I thought they actually held up until you get to the third act where everything goes to shit in this movie in the third act. It's just that's where this movie falls apart. I feel this movie is amazing up until then.
I think that's a good place to start is visual effects.
Yes,
because that is a lot of the problem in that third act, especially. The company that did this is EdgeFX, and if you're not familiar with EdgeFX, they were the ones who basically helped pioneer the effects in The Abyss back in the 80s. They've done so many movies. They're a big house. If you don't get ILM, you get EdgeFX.
Yeah, they wasn't the Abyss team also the team that split off to do ILM? They were the diverging teams. So these guys were they were big time.
Right. And what you get here is some really great transitions that are done by computer. And it's really well done. Even something as simple as the character of an Invisible Man. I'll get into that. Not the Invisible Man, but an Invisible Man.
Well, they had reasons for that.
Yes, we will get there. No, the stuff they do with him is really good. You'd think, oh, just put a guy in green screen or something like in a green screen suit and that's it. It's more complex than that because you've got interactions, you've got things with environments, and then when he puts on coats and hats, and Skinner is done really well. I like the effects that they bring into it, and then even the white makeup.
I love what watching him put it on again. I thought it was amazing. This is 2003, and this effect really it works really. And then the turning of the camera, so you see from behind and the makeup in the reverse. And from the reverse facial structure, and it's a weird effect, and it looks funky because you've never seen something through in the reverse of that side of the face before. It's weird, but it works so well. I felt
it's very well done. And then the stuff with Nemo's ship, the Nautilus, I am in love with it. This is not
production design.
The Nautilus. I both Well, both from a visual effects standpoint and also the insides of the
Yeah.
ship. When we see them going through it, it's gorgeous. It's beautiful. It has definitely not aged quite as well.
Yeah.
I mean, it clearly is CG, but it's so beautiful and it's different than the book describes it. And I like that, taking your own image, taking your own view of it. And they do such a good job with it. I mean, if you haven't seen the movie, it basically is this very, very slim design.
It fits the sword of the ocean. It fits
Yeah,
that. It
exactly.
fits that
It looks
moniker.
like a sword. It looks like a sword going through it. Halfway through the movie, they're even taking the Nautilus through the canals of Venice, and it's that good a profile that it's able to fit through there. And I even had to ask, like, could a ship do that? And the reality is, certain canals in Venice, yeah, you absolutely
I
could
mean,
fit
I was thinking
a
about
large
that, but
ship
you could
there.
only go straight. Like I'm like, they can't turn nowhere. They're only going straight up the canal and right back. There's no way they're doing anything but that.
And it's really great. The Jekyll and
Oh, I
Hyde.
want to talk about this because I think I was watching him, and other than a couple shots for Jekyll, I'm convinced that it's practical. Like either that or
Um,
it's the best fucking CGI I've ever seen because
so
it's really, really fucking good. Like,
you're it's half.
yeah.
So face is practical. It's the same actor. I thought for years it was a different actor, but that goes to the acting. It's
Mhm.
it's really well done. The face is practical, and at times
There was an
when
arm
he's
for
just
sure.
standing there, yeah, it's practical. But when he's in action,
Oh
it's
yes,
CG.
yeah, that stuff. But like, it's just the mix of that is done amazingly. Like, I think this is like it's one of like it's the interactions that they're able to get in between that and the Rodney character when he's invisible. Like
Yeah.
this movie is. I think it's ahead of its time in its use of CGI. The problem was it used way too much in the especially in the end there. Like that's the over and that's what I was reading this like the over reliance on putting too much CGI in was like a,
Yeah. So while we love the CGI with Jekyll and Hyde, there's the
the
ending where okay,
abomination.
the, I was gonna make the reference later, but yes,
They're
there's an
well
abomination
Jekyll's our
created.
Hulk
Yeah,
and he gets a
Jekyll's the
full
Hulk.
he gets a full character arc in this movie as compared to I'll say this the Avengers where the Hulk is just introduced he's a character in the Avengers but like Jekyll and Hyde get like a full character arc in this movie like they go through stuff and Hyde becomes a hero basically in this movie.
Yeah, Jekyll and Hyde by far is probably one of the more well done characters in this, and that's the only one you're gonna hear out of. That's one of the major problems with this film. But again, we'll get into
I think for
spoilers a little bit.
yeah
But
yeah
yeah, the visuals in terms of the abomination type character, it really goes to show two improvements because
Mhm.
this guy looks so bad. It looks like a cartoon in a bad way, bad guy. And then when you go ahead, actually, this is 2003. 2008 is the Incredible Hulk. So 5 years
Mhm.
when they bring in the abomination into the equation, they've always liked the design choices and the
Yep.
CG, what they did with Abomination. I like the combination, the face. It feels like what they did was they took the menacing part that was supposed to be this tide-like creature, took that, but instead gave more care with what they did with Jekyll and Hyde.
Yeah.
So it got better. So I definitely see that influence there. Um, but yeah, Jekyll and Hyde, probably it's the transition too. The transition phases
Oh,
between turning
it's like a
into this guy.
Cronenberg movie. I fucking love it
Yeah,
so much. It's so like twisted and like there's like three different stages of him in mid transformation. I love the flashing in between it. Like the transformation is beautiful
yeah.
and scary.
Yeah. I mean, clearly, like the visual effects are good. The scenery. We talked a little bit about scenery last week. The
Mhm.
scenery of like Venice,
Yeah.
or even you can really tell a good visual effects house when they can do water right.
I was
But they can do
I
water.
was gonna say I didn't love the water is the one that I think aged the worst of any visual effect in this movie. Anything to do with the water, like the water on the Nautilus look itself looks great, but then the water waves in the canal on the Nautilus, I think it looked like CGI water, and it's like that sucks, but it's really hard back then. CGI water
Yeah.
was hard to do up until basically Avatar. Like Avatar
Right.
was the one that like basically like figured out the foam and the currents that you need to get the water to look right, I think.
True, but to be fair, again, Edge FX is the one that did the Abyss.
Yes.
So if anybody should be able to do a water
Oh yeah.
effect,
It's good. It's
it
good for the
should be that.
time. It's good for the time, but it's one of the only effects that I felt actually didn't age well. Like along with the other stuff, it was the only one that kind of really stuck out in my mind. But there's a lot of like CG vista shot, like CG establishing shots, like the whole opening of it, the whole opening going down and giving the intro is like it's all CG shots and stuff like that. And I think it's you can tell, but I think it works for the movie because even when we're talking about production design, when Sawyer and Quartermain are running through the streets to catch Hyde in Paris, like
Mhm.
it looks like a 1930s German expressionist version of Paris. Like everything's on a weird angle. Things are too long for roofs are too long for the walls. It just everything looks a little off and a little crooked and a little weird. And I think that it all adds to this great horror aspect of it. And I think that's one of the things the movie excels at is this kind of atmosphere that it builds.
Yeah, it absolutely does hit atmosphere really well. And usually it's kind of dark.
Yes.
And I don't mean this to tell
That's my
it's very
biggest
dark
yeah, probably my
here.
biggest criticism is like, oh man, I wish I could use a little more light in this movie. Just a couple more like fill lights. But it works for the
So
visual effects. But that's the
yeah.
I think that's if you watch Corridor Crew on YouTube, they're like a LA based VFX like team, and they do like short films and videos and stuff like that, and they break down visual effects and they show like how visual effects work better. And one of the ways to do it is to basically darken the scene. And you see that a lot actually in the Avengers. A lot of the Avengers is actually pretty dark rewatching it right now. Like there's a lot that's dark up until you get to the battle in New York and stuff like that. There are lots of scenes in the dark, and that helps mask certain CG things that aren't up to snuff and helps hide defaults.
Yeah. So I would love to actually just break down now kind of the meat and potatoes of this story and the
Yeah.
characters with it, and because that is a lot of what people either are going to really love or hate about your characters. So the film's directed by Stephen Norrington. Unfortunately, this was the last film Mr. Norrington did. Hollywood did not forgive him
No, I
and
think they
said
should.
goodbye.
Well, apparently
He's still working.
he didn't have a great time on set either. From what I've read,
No,
there was some with the
usually
studio
happen here is
interference.
something we'll see a lot of in other films we'll review in the future. Studio involvement. The studio put way too much input into it and really stressed him out to where he almost had no control over his own film.
Yeah.
It really happens within our characters. So, okay, we have Quartermain. Quartermain is from the Quartermain novels. Uh, um, he's an adventurer in Africa, and he seeks treasure and saves for country. He's like Sherlock Holmes, only action and gun toting, and he's a keen marksman. Which I think that the whole, especially the action and marksman part, they
Yeah.
show that really
Yeah.
well. And Quartermain is also in the original graphic novel.
Yes.
This was based on a graphic novel, actually a series of graphic novels. There were six volumes, I think.
I've yet to read them. I have a couple of them. I have
Yeah,
to read them.
this is mainly based on the first one.
Yeah.
Most of it.
So
Uh Sean Connery does a good job. So if this is Sean Connery's swan song, it's not Sean's fault.
it's
Sean
I
gave
think he's
everything to
great.
this.
I think he's great in this movie. Like he's good. He's like he's acting. He's not phoning it in. He doesn't feel like he's
Yeah.
phoning it in. And honestly, I think So I think we should do this. So you introduce, because you have this history with these characters. You know, you actually know most of these characters. What
Right.
I knew coming into this movie, back when I first watched this movie when I was young, was the pop culture versions of these characters. Like the
Right.
broadest scope. Like I was a nerd. I read books too. Like I read like a lot of like silly. I was reading Shakespeare when I was young because my mom had like extra copies in the house, and I just loved it. So like I know of things and I know around it, but like I didn't have as much of a knowledge base as you do in this. So coming
Right.
into it, Sean Connery was Henry Jones Sr., James Bond in this movie. Like that, it was like to me, that's who he was. He was the evolution of Henry Jones Jr. and his James Bond, and he just
Yeah.
mixed into one. And I thought that character works perfectly compared to, I don't know how he works with exactly with the Alan Quartermain per se, because I had never read those stories. I knew of
Yeah,
them.
Quartermain in the original stories and in the graphic novel. Well, the graphic novel, he is about the age that Sean Connery kind of sets in here, but in the novels, he's very much a middle-aged kind of guy. He's not old by any means. He's an experienced explorer. He's very Indiana Jones
Yeah.
in that, so it's a fair compromise or a comparison on. And Sean does fine. He really does. And we see, spoiler alert, uh, Sean Connery dies. And it's really interesting because he goes down being the hero.
Mm-hmm.
He also goes down being the instructor.
Yeah.
He takes on a fatherly role to another character we'll get to momentarily. Um, but he does it really well with panache, with reverence, with respect. Sean Connery by far, um, right under Jekyll and Hyde, in my opinion, is the second best written character in this story.
Mm-hmm.
They give him the most to work with, and I really appreciate that. He still needed more.
Yeah.
He needed more. But what he had and what he was given, you don't tell Sean Connery no. What's interesting about this film, though, and this is kind of funny to me. He not only he turned down before this film the Matrix as the architect, which I think would have been brilliant. He would have been great as that. And he turned down, and I think this is the one he's got to sit on because he never understood it. He turned down the role of Gandalf in the Lord of the Rings
Yep.
trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, listen, and I love Ian McKellen. Ian is great as Gandalf. I really would love to even see a screen test
I
of
don't know.
what.
I could see Connery as Saruman, maybe, but like I don't know if I can see him as Gandalf.
But that
Like,
makes it's still more curious to me.
yeah.
You turned it down, and then you end up doing a film that in the end has a 17% on Rotten
See,
Tomatoes.
but see, I think the Indiana Jones, James Bond, like the Alan Quartermain, I think something about that kind of like old school kind of adventurer thing. I think that's what kind of drew him to this. Cause I don't think like,
Right.
yeah, cause he had never really been into like sci-fi and into fantasy. Like I like Zart, what is it, Zardos, when he wears that like that red mankini. That's the closest sci-fi he's ever done, right? Like
Yeah, I was thinking of fantasy too. Him and as
oh,
Draco
oh, it's
and
Draco.
Dragonheart.
Yeah, see, that's great. Like that's a but all he has to do for that is go into a booth and voice
Boo.
it, right? So I
Yeah,
mean, for him, that's a little different. Even though I fucking love that movie, we should do that
yeah.
movie. That's a good movie.
We'll get there at some point.
Yeah.
So and Quartermain, he's our leader. He's Sean Connery. He's your lead. He
Mm-hmm.
was your headliner. That's how you get people in.
It's your cap.
Yeah. So next down the list is not an actor that's known here in America, but after seeing his resume, forgive me, sir, Nasiruddin Shah. He played Nemo. He is
Mm-hmm.
a Bollywood actor. He's a major Bollywood actor. The guy is renowned all throughout India. He is an Indian actor, and he plays Nemo as what you would expect a very exotic type Indian to be, according to 19th century literature.
Yes, that's another thing with this movie. It is very. I was gonna say I'd bring it before. We can get into it when we talked about Mina if we want. But like Sean Connery and Mina's interactions feel like Sean Connery went like, "Hey, there's a woman in this group. can I talk a little smack to her? Because like I don't know if that's like in the script or if that's a thing Sean Connery's like, hey, I gotta have a little bit of say in this script here because it's a weird thing. And like there's a couple things with like the like calling him a pirate and stuff like that, and they make a joke about it later. But like yes, it is very stereotypical to say the least in general. But like that's the thing where you straddle the line when you're in like a night time like 1899 and you're like, okay, so how much do you play in to the stereotypes and that without trying to seem like you are exposed like you are what is it you're trying to push them forward, right? You're trying to make them acceptable. Like how do you ride that line? I think this does it okay, but there are some times where it's a little funky in this movie.
Yeah, Nemo plays the role of the wise kind of sage in this.
Mhm.
Also the Q character, the tech.
Yeah.
He's got all the toys. Of course, the Nautilus is his. And we
The
are introduced to
automobile.
automobile. It's a six-wheeled, elongated, actually working vehicle that they made specifically
Shit.
for this film, and it's gorgeous. Like really, the aesthetic lines they make on this, as inconceivable as it is beautiful. Like the design that they chose for everything in here, even down to the weapons, the guns, the
Mhm.
swords, everything they have is just so detailed to the aesthetics of late 19th century literature. I absolutely adore that. And he does a good job as Nemo. Nemo always he's got something wise to say. He's
Mhm.
never a jerk,
Yep.
and he admits his flaws at times. You mentioned the pirate thing. At first, he was called a pirate by Sean Connery, and he has a quip about it. And later on, he comes back and says, "You know what? Yeah,
Yep.
you're right. I am a pirate, but I have a job to do, and I have my own integrity." And he's a good character. Um, as we go down this list, we're going to see characters get worse and worse and worse. Nemo is not a bad character, other than the stereotypes.
Yeah.
You take that away, everything else he does is really good in it,
Yeah.
and has some pretty good action
He's
scenes.
he's a great fighter. He's got some great fight scenes.
He
Yeah.
is not a gun user; he's a sword user, and he's badass with it too. He's making slices and cuts. He and Hyde fight I'm going to call it the abomination
Yeah,
from now
exactly.
on. Yeah,
Either
he
that or
fights them.
who's the guy from Resident Evil 2, right? Like that big Nemesis. You can call him
Yeah,
Nemesis if you want.
yeah. So, yes, he's fighting him. He takes out his sword and he starts just doing a lot of quick
Really, really
cuts and
fast.
quick
Going really, really, really
slashes.
fast.
And he manages to save Hyde right at that point. And it's like, wow, all right, Nemo, really good. The only thing I don't like it is that his design, while stereotypical, reminds me of the Blue Raja from. He's all in blue, and it's a good blue,
Oh
but
my
he
god, a
looks like the
Mystery
Blue
Men came out
Raja.
before too. Mystery Men came out at like 99, so it's like they could have like, oh no, you could have totally avoided that.
Yeah. So yeah,
Oh man.
that's Nemo. Mina, played by Peter Wilson. I love Peter Wilson. She's not in everything, but when she's in it, I really like her. Peter Wilson plays Mina Harker. Mina Harker was in literature and both in this movie. She was the wife to Jonathan Harker, who in if you don't know Bram Stoker's Dracula
Yeah.
was Keanu Reeves. And so he dies, and this takes place after Dracula. So in the story of Dracula, she is bitten and she is turned. So in this story, she is a
Vampire.
vampire, a full vampire. And they really play her off to be this very the first half of the film, she's this very prim and proper Victorian woman. Exactly. Women aren't scientists, and that's the thing too. She's a chemist.
she's
In
she's
this one,
very
she's the brain.
Mary Curie. She's very Mary Curie. Like
Yeah.
she's introduced that kind of got that feel like that kind of like she had a husband died and
Yeah.
she kind of like went on, right? Like kind of like
Um,
they mix a lot of historic figures and we'll get to that when we get into other characters later.
yeah. She has a relationship with another character, and they start to sexualize her a little bit as the film goes along. You can definitely see it. There's a turning point for her character where all of a sudden she starts out she's got a bun, she's got glasses, very librarian,
Yeah.
very Victorian librarian at times. Little gothic. It's got that gothic flair, but it's very prim and proper. There's a point where her hair goes down. And
Wasn't it? Yeah,
yeah,
it's when she first
Venice.
bites the guy, right? Like she like in the I thought it was in the when they meet Dorian and they have to fight and they have that big fight in the library and she bites the person with Tom
They
Sawyer.
discover her powers, but I don't think that turning point really happens for us
She
until after the
I
Battle of Venice.
see. I think the reason she's sexualized is because they sexualize the vampire of like in this movie. The vampirism is like complete. Like that's the idea is that it's completely sexual because when she first bites that guy, she's all hot and horny right after she bites that guy. Like that's what like that's the look she gives Tom and everything. And she's like, don't you even come close.
Yeah. So speaking of Tom, it's important to note Shane West plays Tom Sawyer. So, and I skipped a character, but since
We'll go back to him.
Oh yeah, so Tom Sawyer is interesting because first of all, Tom Sawyer is a complete studio edition. Studio wanted someone that was young and could appeal to young Americans because, as the studio said, Americans don't read. Thank you, studio. 20th Century Fox. I'm glad you're purchased by Disney.
They were right though. Honestly, they're right. Like I mean, like seriously though, like if you put a Tom Sawyer in there, it's the only American character. It's I think and
but turn him into this gun-toting Secret Service member. What in the world does the Secret Service have to do with what the heck?
Okay. Secret Service is like the only issue with it because it's like yeah, like I don't really buy Tom Sawyer being a Secret Service agent, right? Like I mean like maybe like the problem is you're in 1899. I'm trying to remember the history of the United States of what
was in place. Secret Service was the Secret Service order was on Lincoln's desk to be signed, and then he was shot. So he never signed it. So the Secret Service order took effect right after Lincoln.
Because I know they had different responsibilities at different times in the American system, right? Like, so the FBI definitely wasn't around then. So I think like the only other option would have been to make him probably like a marshal of some sort, right? Like if the marshal service, and I think that because they're a little more kind of like gung ho and a little more kind of.
He's definitely the cowboy. When you look at his style, he's got that cowboy aesthetic. He carries a Winchester rifle, which nothing is more.
I love it so much.
Smith & Wesson Colt Winchester. That's what he's got. And him and Sean Connery have this bickering back and forth a little bit because according to Sean Connery, the American style is to shoot at everything and hope you hit the target.
Yeah.
I think that's actually a quote.
Yeah.
Yeah, hope you have enough bullets for it.
Yeah.
Sean Connery is different. He's more methodical, take your time, which is, something they deal with. And he mentors Tom Sawyer. But Sawyer is attracted to Mina. Mina said at one point, Sawyer opens up the door for Mina and she says, "You're sweet and you're young, neither of which are traits I find
I hold in high esteem or high in regard." Yeah. It's like, oh shit.
Yeah, Tom's great. We have the character of Skinner, played by Tony Curran. Now, what's great is you don't need to know who Tony Curran is because you're never gonna see him. You see his face a little bit.
They do a good job of transitioning in from like when he's in the car for the first time. When they sits in the car, he's still like kind of got some of the makeup on, and then they cut to another shot in the car, and he obviously has put all the makeup on, and it's really just Tony Curran sitting there with white grease paint all over himself, which that must have been a hell of a makeup day for him.
So the character, the Invisible Man, he is the Invisible Man, not the Invisible Man. The studio, in all its power, couldn't get the rights to the story of the Invisible Man from H.G. Wells. I don't know how, but they couldn't do it. Part of it is also
I'm pretty sure Universal. I was gonna say
Universal rights too.
Yeah,
that has something to do with it.
Yeah.
But the point is they wanted the Invisible Man. They couldn't get him, so they created this character and called him Uninvisible Man.
They literally made a thief that stole the original like a mad scientist formula. They thieved the idea with a thief and I love it. Like it's like, okay, we'll just steal the idea with a thief, and it's great. Like it's like
Yeah.
I thought it was, and he's a great character because he rides that line of that kind of original Invisible Man. He's kind of a not a hero, right? He's not a good guy.
Right. And but these guys, okay, so these six are our league, but there is a seventh. We have Stuart Townsend as Dorian Gray. Now,
I actually kind of like him on rewatch. I know you don't like him at all,
okay.
but like on
Uh,
rewatch, I kind of like him.
Kyle and I have talked about this in the past. I do not like Stuart Townsend at all. He did this, and then he did what is it, Queen of the Damned. I hate Queen of the Damned. It is. I'm sorry
I love it
to y'all.
because
Yeah,
it's
and I
bad.
say
I love it because
it.
it's bad, but
It's a terrible movie. And so Stuart Townsend is on my list forever. No, but he plays Dorian Gray. Now, this again, this is why the I'll get into it in a second about the overall theme here, what we're dealing with. But Stuart Townsend plays Dorian Gray, which was a novel originally written by Oscar Wilde in the mid 20th or mid 19th century about a man who doesn't age, but has a portrait that's made of him that ages for him instead. What makes this interesting is that this is the Dorian Gray of Hollywood, not the Dorian Gray of literature. Literature lesson here for the moment. Dorian Gray in the original could look upon his painting all he wanted. His sins and his character was manifested in the painting, so it would really show his true insides. It's a lesson on aesthetics, which Oscar Wilde was big on too. This Dorian Gray is overly Hollywood made because literally his weakness is if he looks at his painting, he will die. So inherently, he is an immortal,
yeah.
which he also apparently has had past dealings with Mina.
And
Specifically,
Quartermain and
and
Quartermain.
correct.
He taught a lecture at Quartermain School when Quartermain was a boy. Basically, he was
Right.
the adult lecturer at Quartermain School.
And he definitely plays the playboy here, and he does that well. I'll give him that. He really does. But what we find out is that unfortunately, he is the lackey to our main villain, and he is our mole in the organization. And so there ends up being a fight, and actually a really good fight in the end between him and Mina.
Yes.
Which, when we're talking about visual effects, both Mina and him, when they're injured, scratched, shot, whatever, they immediately heal up. And so Mina, her skin literally heals together and binds it. You see it. Dorian, he almost like sand.
It's almost like a
comes out of
it's like a painting. To me, it reminds me
Yeah,
of like
ash.
a restore or like a unrestored painting, an old falling apart painting that gets restored into a full paint. And like I thought that worked well. My only other critique about the CG of this movie is Dorian's death because I remember it being very Last Crusade, like very good Donovan level quality stuff, and it is very bad. Like it is not good.
Just like Tom Sawyer, he was added in. He was never in the
Really?
original. Yes, Dorian Gray was never in the original graphic novel.
Mm,
So he was added in to kind of add that
yeah.
foil thing. And again, Dorian Gray's a good character. I love the story. I've read it many times. And it's a really great example. And Townsend does well with what it
Yeah,
is. I just don't like Townsend.
talked
So
we talked a little earlier about maybe that they kind of mixed Oscar Wilde in with Dorian Gray. Like they kind of
yeah,
because of this they are kind of playing with the pop cultureness of these characters and they're kind of adjusting them and making them kind of superheroes that they kind of took a little bit of his creator and mixed them in because he was this playboy, he was this kind of flirt with everybody, and he was this kind of like this kind of world wanderer, right? Like the kind of a mix between the two of them instead of just a Dorian Gray.
yes. But despite what we'd like to think in Dorian Gray being our villain, he is not our main villain. Our main villain actually is quite plain and yet complex at the same time. So Richard Roxburgh, who I'm sure in the future we will talk about him whenever we get to Van Helsing.
Oh,
Uh, yeah,
so
he plays M. Well, we meet him as M.
which is
So
another great James Bond reference in the movie.
see, that's interesting. in the original graphic novel, we meet Commander Bond's grandfather. So James Bond's
Yeah.
grandfather is a character in
Okay.
the graphic novel. So he plays M, who, if you're not familiar with Bond lore, M is the head of MI6. So he's recruiting the League to stop everything and to bring everyone together. But there's also this bad guy that we meet in the very beginning who is wearing a silver phantom mask.
Calls himself the
And he
Phantom.
calls the Phantom. So
Little
Phantom
dramatic.
dramatic. Yeah. Um, but what we discover is, M is the Phantom, because we didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
Yeah. So his whole thing is kind of actually very Joker-esque. Like,
Yeah.
I want chaos. I want to see the world burn, and he's going to do
He,
whatever he
he
can
just wants to
get
make the most money off of it. That's all he wants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then we find out that M is actually Moriarty, so Professor Moriarty from Sherlock Holmes, and they do a good job with him too because he mentions Reichenbach,
Yeah.
which in the
And this
stories
is after.
the second
Yeah.
movie.
This is after
Yeah,
Reichenbach falls.
he had survived.
Yeah.
He survived the death, the fall at Reichenbach. So he is our main villain, and he's trying to get a world war started. About 20 years short, dude, but we'll get there. And he's very over the top, which is something we see in Richard Roxburgh. Another one, if you really want to see Richard Roxburgh go overboard, is in Moulin Rouge.
Oh, geez, I haven't seen that one.
He plays the same manic guy in a lot of the things that he does, and he's really good at it.
Yeah.
He's good at playing that manic, over the top character. What we get when we put all of these guys together is a lot of action. Nothing wrong with that. The action is good.
Mm-hmm.
The story is not, and that's a failure because the graphic novel is really good. It's very dark, it's very twisted, but it combines a lot of these characters together in very good ways. Now, if you want to throw in Tom Sawyer, you want to throw in Dorian Gray, no problem with that. I need to care. If I was a normal person who, like the studios say, don't read, I'm not going to care about these characters. I cared about these characters, but in the end, I sat there going, what happened? I love them because of nostalgia.
Yeah.
I love them in my own way, and that's why it's good in that respect. I like those aspects of it, but if you're not familiar with it, you don't have that advantage, and I think that's where it really hits the 17%. It's not in the visual effects, it's not in the music, which, again, the music, like The Mummy,
fine.
It's good music, but you're not going to remember it.
Yeah.
You will not sit and remember it, unlike a certain theme that we will get to when we talk about the Avengers.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just we don't care about these characters. At the end of the day, we still have to ask ourselves, when we put this on our list to review, why do we love it? It's fun.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, this was our Avengers. We didn't have any Avengers to look at. We didn't have a Justice League. We had Power Rangers. I think that's about as close as we got.
Well, look at the opening scene. Even the opening scene, like coming back to it, like they take a tank and they plow it through London, and it's practical. Like all of this stuff, you can see they're smashing through these bookcases and things, and they're blowing stuff up. And there's like London police with billy clubs trying to, like, what are we supposed to do to this tank? And it's like it's constant. It has this pace to it up until about 3/4 of the way through, until the third act. You start to lose that pace a bit, but like it's got this pace to it that I think the Avengers like perfected. Like the Avengers has that perfect pace to it, and we'll get to that eventually.
Yeah, and the interesting thing here is as characters are introduced, they are always introduced with some kind of an action scene at some point. Jekyll and Hyde, it's catching Hyde, and he's running atop the rooftops of London.
Then the netting him into the ship. That's a wicked.
Yeah, that's a really good sequence. They did that well. When they meet Dorian Gray, they come together. M meets our heroes, or Moriarty, Phantom, whatever. Meets our guys, and then there's a fight right then and there.
All the pieces of books and the pages flying in there. It's a great action scene.
there's a soldier. He points up his gun. It's the first time we see Nemo with his sword. Points a gun at Nemo, and he's like, "What are you gonna do?" He's like, "I walk a different path." And he takes out his sword, just kicks it right there, and that's a good line. But I walk a different path. That was a really good line.
Yeah.
Everything is always encompassed in an action scene. And then everything that's in between feels awkward, like they're trying to be funny. There's a scene that's really strange to me. Um, Quartermain is in his cabin aboard the Nautilus, and he's doing research, reading. I don't know exactly what he's doing, which is part of the problem. But he hears something fall, and he turns out the lights,
Oh,
and
yeah.
then you hear a scuffle, and he's like, "Skinner, next time." Oh, that's the other thing. Skinner, invisible, is completely naked.
Yeah, he has to be naked to be invisible. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's like, "Next time I want to see you with all your clothes on," and he throws them out. But like,
that's it.
why is that there?
Yeah, there's nothing else in that scene. There must have been something deleted, or that must, you know what that must have been? It must have been because I think there was definitely added scenes because they're like, wait, we can't believe that Dorian did this. Like, there's like, he didn't like show anything or something like that, right? Like, why do people believe Skinner did this? So we have to add in a scene to make it seem like Skinner is an antagonist or stuff like that, right? Because it's a little, the Skinner Dorian thing is a little flimsy because like.
So our audience knows the master plan is to create World War I, and Moriarty is going to do that through technology, but also by harnessing the power of the League. So he got Quartermain to capture Hyde, so he can get the serum, Hyde serum. He got Mina's blood, so he has vampiric blood. He got a skin sample from the Invisible Man, so he could have the invisible, and then Nemo's science, as he puts it. So he's taking pictures of the Nautilus and all the technology that goes with that. So he's combining all of those aspects together and is selling them off to both sides to start a world war. And then he gets all this done on the ship through Dorian. And that's the other thing too, which we'll see in similarities when we start talking about Avengers here in a minute. There's a structural thing going on that Avengers does that Avengers does way better.
Yes.
But there's a structure that hits every bone each way.
Well, it's like Mummies and Raiders, like we talked about, right? Like these types of movies, whether or not they're good or bad, they follow a certain type of structure, right? There's a certain way that they kind of break down and they go, right? Like most of this movie is them getting together, right? Like getting together and preparing for the big battle. And like the Avengers don't get together for the big battle until 3/4 of the way through the movie.
Right. And we really don't get everyone together completely until the final the final battle in they're in Mongolia. I think.
That's another part where it's like I had to rewind it twice to realize like Skinner sent them a heading because he was hidden in the thing. Like that was a little convoluted, but like it proves that Skinner is not a bad guy. So that was good.
So I think to really give this a comparison to kind of see why we love it. Let's talk about the Avengers.
Yeah.
We have to talk about the Avengers. So the Avengers 2012. The movie event. I mean, put yourself in that time. Okay,
we had there.
five MCU films. Okay, we've been building up to this. We have been waiting to see what is going to happen, and we knew we wanted to see these guys come together. And this film did it right. It is a 92% on Rotten Tomatoes, and it's well deserved.
It's near perfect.
It is a near perfect film. Directed and written by Joss Whedon.
And there's an issue that popped up in this movie with Joss Whedon writing and directing this movie that we'll talk about a little later. But like, it's something that I didn't notice until because I just started recently watching Firefly, and there's some Joss Whedon isms in Firefly that I've been listening to Whitney Seibold and William Bibiani talk about, where it's like, oh man, like I didn't realize that's what he did in this movie too. But sorry, go ahead. We'll get to that later.
Visual effects with this.
We talked about that a lot. Yeah.
While League went with one house, Marvel. Well, actually, at the time too, it wasn't Disney. It was Paramount. Paramount and Marvel Studios went with 14 different visual effects houses. They went through ILM. They pretty much were going through every major one. And what they were doing, we're going, okay, what is your specialty? What can you do? What can you do? They what I called they Batmaned it. You remember in Batman Begins where he says, "We're gonna build this part from China,
Yeah.
and then we're gonna get this part from a secret house." You know, and like they're bringing everything together. That is what they did in Avengers with the
Mhm.
visual effects. They brought so many different pieces together and orchestrated it beautifully because it looks good. It still looks
It
good.
looks amazing.
I've seen stuff from 2012 that does not look good. Still, this is beautiful.
Well, this like
Uh,
there are parts where it looks like you can there's some issues I have with Civil War and it's floaty head syndrome. Like I think that like in the airport scene, it looks like it really looks green screen and like they're sitting on Tony's sitting on a bobblehead on his uniform. But like when Tony's laying on the ground in the Battle of New York, like it's there. You can only tell because they have his helmet wrapped around his head a little bit that that's CGI, but it is so much cleaner than even Civil War. And it's because it's the first time they were able to get all these guys together. I think that they really put their all into this movie.
yeah, the sets for that too were a beautiful mix of CG and practical. When they're on the actual streets of New York, every bit of that is practical.
Yeah.
They built a rubbled out. It's green screen behind them if you watch the behind the scenes, but the whole cars and stuff not you'd think too when like Hulk throws a car or an alien's gonna shoot, you'd think that's CG. They made that
Wires and
practical in front of actors. Like that's impressive. The amount of work that went into that to get that realism and that feeling as they're fighting and the choreography that goes into that. Because the Chitauri are all CG.
yes.
Our aliens are all CG. And I'm sure they've got a couple of stunt guys on set to help out, but I would bet dollars to donuts that there was quite a bit of miming and
Yeah.
work and stuff like that to make that work.
I think the production design too, like one of my favorite things is the way that the shield ships look and like the interior, the just the angles and the computers, the see-through screens, all the entire, and this has been in the Marvel universe before, but like this entire aesthetic of this semi-futurism that they have, right? This really like slickness to it all. Like it's like it could be now, but 10 or 15 years from now, if we're really lucky, if we're really good.
And I know I had talked about the ship in the first one, so I think it's only appropriate to talk about the helicarrier.
Yes.
The helicarrier is beautiful.
Mhm.
When we're introduced to the helicarrier first, it looks like they're just on an aircraft carrier, like anything else. Cap comments on that,
Yeah.
he says, "I bet this all looks pretty unreal to you." No, actually,
This part's familiar.
this is kind of familiar. Yeah. Um, then when I was like, "You guys might want to get inside," and they think it's going to be a submarine, but it's a helicarrier. It
Mm.
lifts up out of the ground, or not out of the ground, out of the water. And again, water effects, beautiful
Amazing water effects. Yeah.
and you see it rise up and just that process of going up into the air and getting fully
It's got that
airborne.
score
And
too.
then
Yep.
yes to the score, get to the score. But then even the simple touch as having stealth panels underneath
The
that
retro reflectors. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's beautiful. It
And
just
the
it's
phases that it go through too, it's not just like they turn it on and it just like automatically goes like there's about 3 phases that it goes through and it eventually gets more and more see-through.
yeah. That's I mean just one of the similarities between the two is the fact that we have a base. We have a base of operations. While League we have the Nautilus. Here it's the helicarrier. Um, so I guess we've got to go through our characters. We've really got to bring in our team. Has not already been said? So our leader of everything is Captain America. Steve Rogers, played by Chris Evans. The soldier.
What
He's
can
the
you
leader.
say?
What can you say? He's
Other
Captain
than
America.
other than my one of my biggest issues with this movie since day one is that cowl. That fucking cowl is like the worst thing ever put on somebody's head ever. Like it puffs his face out. Like I don't get it. Like I don't get why they would do that. Like halfway through the fight they rip it off and he doesn't have it on anymore. It's like thank God. But like just as soon as he puts it on, he looks like a 12-year-old cosplaying as Captain America and I hate it cuz like
So
cuz
blame that on Coulson.
This is
I
the
want to blame that on Coulson. Think
this
about
is
that.
the best Captain America has ever looked right here.
Isn't that the World War II
That's
Captain America?
that's that is Captain America from the first Avenger. It's like
Yeah.
legit, like wicked, realistic combat armor,
Yeah.
and they fucked it up.
But it was you got to think though too. It's based on the original comic design.
Yeah,
I get that. I get
Yeah.
what they were playing with, and I will say that throughout the films, the improvements on his costume have
yes,
been really well done.
yeah. The Winter Soldier one is really nice too. Yeah, and
Oh,
then
that's beautiful.
Age of Ultron's cool. Yeah.
I love Endgame. Even Endgame, how it's
Yes.
still it's modernized and yet it's armor. Yeah, it's beautiful. But let's stick with Avengers. He's the heart. He's our leader. He is the heart of the team, and he does that very well. He's got the moral center. He's also the butt of a lot of jokes, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
You know. Then we have Thor, played by Chris Hemsworth.
He really looks like he's cosplaying as Thor in this movie. Like, I mean, only compared because he looks so good in Ragnarok and onward, right? Even Dark World, I think he fills out a little bit more. Like he looks small. Like sitting next to Captain America, Thor looks small, and I was like, wow, like I was surprising rewatching it how small he looked. He's great. He's still amazing. I wish they would keep that old English that they kind of had going, because I really like that kind of dialogue that he had originally.
We have Black Widow introduced to us in Iron Man 2, played by beautifully by Scarlett Johansson. One of my favorite overall characters. I'm so disappointed that I have to wait longer for the Black Widow movie.
I'm disappointed that it came out after she died, because I really it's like I don't care as much anymore. Like
so we're introduced to her in this film. Mind you, we haven't seen her since Iron Man 2.
Tied up.
So our introduction to her is she's tied up in a chair
in a slinky
outfit, beautiful red hair, just gorgeous, and she's being interrogated by these Russian people, these Russian military-esque people. And they've got her, and she seems like everything. And then all of a sudden, a phone rings, and the guy's like, "What?" And they pick up the phone. They're like, "Hello," and it's Coulson on the other line, and he's like, "Put her on." And and so they give her the phone, and she's like, "I'm interrogating these guys," and the look on their faces is like, "What?" Just like, "No, they're telling me everything."
And that sets up the Loki moment later in the movie.
Yeah, it sets up the Loki moment. But she's like, they call her in. She's got her job is to go get the Hulk. Talk about it in a minute. So she's like, hold on a second. Hand them back the phone. They put the phone down, and then she instantly gets up and kicks ass for about 30 seconds while still in the chair. Breaks the chair to get out of it and beat them all down. Grabs the phone and goes on her business. Like, it's just the most badass.
It's like
nonchalant.
And like this is where the first Joss Whedon thing popped into my mind. Was the slinky black dress jiggle, like she's jiggling quite a lot in that fight scene. Like and I was like, I'm not complaining. It's just very clear. It's very apparent that like she's a spy, and Joss Whedon put her in a very sexy slim black dress and tied her to a chair and made her fight and jiggle around. And then she picks up those high heels and walks out barefoot. And fucking Gwyneth Paltrow walks around barefoot in Tony's fucking apartment too. Does Joss Whedon have a fucking foot thing like Tarantino? Like, what the fuck? I don't understand. Like, I just noticed this shit, but it's like, why are the only two women in this movie walking around bare fucking foot? Like, this is weird. This shit is weird, man. I don't get it.
And we're introduced, it's a little thing, but if you're a fan of the MCU at all, we're introduced to the mystery of Budapest. So her and Hawkeye through this whole MCU have this talk about what happened in Budapest, and we never know. So I'm secretly hoping
we're getting it.
What is in the Black Widow movie?
I think we're getting it. Yeah.
But anyway, she's best buddies with Hawkeye. Yeah. Her and Hawkeye have a connection, which leads to Hawkeye. So Hawkeye introduced briefly in Thor. Very briefly in Thor.
I really liked it. I wish they did more, but like I was stoked when they introduced Hawkeye in Thor. Like I was rooting for him.
He is a shield agent who is basically brainwashed
It's
by
fucked right away.
Loki. Yeah, right away.
God damn it.
Half of the damn film, he's our bad guy.
Yeah,
And he's
but
that internal knowledge and
he
yeah.
never. This is the thing I've noticed it since the first time I watched it. Hawkeye doesn't fucking miss. Hawkeye does not miss, except when he's shooting at his team. Then he misses. But he purposely doesn't kill shot. He doesn't like he kill shots the guys for Loki when they go into the museum. But anytime a shield agent or Nick Fury or anything like that, he's not shooting to kill.
Okay.
He doesn't kill any of them.
So I have some personal insight to Hawkeye.
Oh yeah.
Two reasons of personal insight. Number one, played by Jeremy Renner. Where I live, Jeremy Renner grew up 30 minutes from
Oh shit.
Oh yeah. So when Jeremy will come back down. He does every so often.
Oh, cool.
And he'll do things for schools. He'll do charity events, things like that for his local home.
Sweet.
Same as George Lucas. So if you know anything about George Lucas, you'll know where he's from.
Oh, they're from the same place. Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Anyway, but okay, I for the last 3 years in college, I've been an archer. I took up archery. I love archery. I am no Hawkeye, no Legolas, but I'm pretty good at it, and I've studied it, and I enjoy it thoroughly. It's something I'm probably going to continue well into my old age. I really like it.
I got to get back into it. I used to do it a lot as a kid.
Hawkeye's archery technique is shit.
Oh yeah. Oh, it's horrible. Yeah, like
archer is sitting there going.
I used to listen to Joe Rogan so much, like before like a bunch of things, but like hearing him go off on how bad Hawkeye shoots a bow is like one of the funniest fucking things in the world.
They switched him up. Jeremy's a lefty, while Hawkeye originally is not a lefty. He's a lefty. It's a little thing, but it's nuts. I'm sitting there going, no, this is incorrect. You are wrong, sir. The way he pulls a bow, when you watch him, when he pulls a bow, the way he holds it, the way everything is like, no, Legolas was more realistic than you, and that was great. So, yeah, actually, and that's funny. Clench up, Legolas. I love the reference.
Yeah.
But yeah, Jeremy Renner eventually gets the crap knocked out of him, and he comes to his senses, and he joins the fight, which actually kind of plays too into later films that Hawkeye is a part of, and I like that aspect of it with the widow, the relationship he has with or not widow, with Scarlet Witch.
Oh yeah, because she was on the other team, and she's like he understands them.
She tries the mind manipulation, and he's like, nope, that's not going to happen again. No, and I like that, but I like that aspect of it.
But yeah, Nat goes to pick up Hulk in what I felt was the missing scene out of Avengers Endgame, where Hulk meets Nat in this exact apartment and tells her that, and she asks him, was it worth it, and blah blah blah. But like I felt they were missing that scene in Endgame, but
which for many people was an interesting controversy when this happened. So I remember when the Avengers cast was formally announced, this was a big deal because RDJ blew it. RDJ messed it up so bad. It was Comic-Con. I believe it was Comic-Con. Everybody's out on stage. He's introducing people as they're coming out.
Oh, that's right.
We're doing it right now. And he says, reprising his role as Dr. Bruce Banner, the Incredible Hulk, and everyone's expecting Ed Norton to walk out because he said reprising.
Yeah.
Mark Ruffalo, and just the crowd went. Just like, but it was a definite
what? He's amazing.
Bruce Banner. He is a great Bruce Banner. And they traditionally, and you saw it in the Ang Lee one, and in this one a little bit too, they would use a Lou Ferrigno bass.
Yeah.
Those who don't know, in the 70s and 80s, he was the original Incredible Hulk. And has made cameos. He was in Ang Lee's Incredible Hulk as well as Ang Lee's Hulk.
Yeah.
The Incredible Hulk. He does cameo in both. But he was also the voice.
He's pretty much animated ones too. Like he's pretty much done like all animated. Like
he's been the Hulk. But Mark Ruffalo is my Bruce Banner.
Yeah, he is.
pulls it. I never for once believed that Bruce Banner was or that Ed Norton was any kind of scientist.
Yeah,
Like, no.
it was a little hard to. It was a. I liked Incredible Hulk. Don't get me wrong. I really liked Incredible Hulk. It was fun, but yeah, Ed Norton definitely didn't give off the scientist vibe. I could only imagine what like the scene, like the scene, like Ed Norton in that scene instead of Mark Ruffalo when they're all like fighting, they're all like in real tense around the scepter. Like it just doesn't fit because Ed Norton has this energy, this kind of anger energy that it would just he would turn into the Hulk then and there, right? Like he wouldn't be this shy, timid guy that's slowly getting turned and picks up the scepter like
Yeah.
Ruffalo does.
But he's got this balance that I really like, and has what I argue is the best scene in the whole movie, which is when he finally arrives and they've all assembled, and they're like, you might want to suit up, Dr. Banner. He's like, that's the thing, Cap. That's my secret.
I'm
I'm
always
always angry. Or he
Yeah.
says, you might want to get angry.
Yeah.
I'm always angry, and instantly transforms.
Yeah.
But I like that because it's a build up from what we started at the very end of the Incredible Hulk movie.
Mm-hmm.
I think he starts to figure that out
Yeah.
and how to control that anger, but he is always angry. And I like that. That aspect of it really played into it well. And it really makes a good team up. Our supporting characters in this aren't so supporting, in my opinion, but that's where they have to fit. The man, Samuel L. Jackson, as Nick Fury.
He has the worst line in this movie. This is one of the, like from day one. This is one of those lines where it's they get in the helicarrier for the first time, and they're talking about the gamma ray, like tracking gamma rays, right? And then Banner goes is like, we need to track so and so satellites, and then Sam Jackson goes, how many are there? And like it's just the reading, the crossing his arms. I don't know why, but every single time it sticks out to me as like the one line where it's like, why is this stuck in here? This is like one of the worst like readings or one of the worst like I just don't get it. Like it's so weird. And it's like and it's a nitpick. It's like there are two, like I said, there are now three things rewatching with the Joss Whedon thing. Three things I don't like about this movie. That Sam Jackson line, Captain America's cowl, and then we'll get to the final Joss Whedon thing when we get to it.
The thing, and Sam Jackson gives us something that is really important because now in comic books, and in all other animated media, the portrayal of Nick Fury is now
Sam Jackson.
Jackson's version.
Yeah.
Nick Fury originally was a white guy.
Mm-hmm. He was David Hasselhoff.
Yeah, it's true.
Even before he was David Hasselhoff, he was David Hasselhoff. That was basically his design.
It's changed the game, and Nick Fury is a great character that I believe behind Robert Downey Jr. now has been in the most. Pretty close to it.
Yeah. I think if not, he would be about tied. Yeah.
Yeah, he's pretty close. He's been in so many from the very beginning with the Avengers initiative. By the way, one of the best deleted scenes that was never done. Have you seen this in the original Iron Man? Where he says, we've got men who crawl on walls. He mentions mutants and Spider-Man because they couldn't get the rights to this. They had to change it to the ending that they have. You think you're the only one. Anyway, but he's really great. He is the man behind the curtain, although he has no problem showing his face. As we get to see in Winter Soldier, can kick ass.
Oh yeah,
and I really like that. We have Maria Hill played by Colby Smulders.
She gets a little to do.
It's still great to see her in this. It's something other than How I Met Your Mother.
Have you seen Stumptown? I'm gonna plug Stumptown because Stumptown is fucking awesome. Everybody should go watch Stumptown. Yeah,
I love Colby Smulders. She's another one that is carrying throughout the MCU. Mm-hmm. And then the man, the true heart of the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Agent Phil Coulson. I thought his first name was just Agent.
he's
played by Clark Gregg.
He's great. I love the first time he shows up in the movie when he pops into Tony's tower there with Pepper and there's like, Phil, why is he Phil?
No, I still laugh at that every time. That it was like, no, I thought his first name was Agent. Tony being Tony.
Yeah.
But Phil Coulson is the catalyst that happens. On the helicarrier, Loki. I haven't even got to Loki yet. Loki kills it basically right then and there. And it's the catalyst that sets everything forward for the team, for the Avengers to work together.
Finally,
because as they've interacted with each other, they don't get along. Their egos clash. They're yelling and sniping at each other and fighting. And his death is that catalyst to get everything going. But luckily, and again, if you're a fan of the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., he's not dead.
Well, he was dead, and then now he's not.
Well,
and then
remember,
he was again.
The magical place.
Yeah. I don't know. I have to catch up on the last 2 seasons, so.
I am so behind. I'm so behind on that. Anyway, but he's really really great in that. And then our villain, our main guy, Loki, Tom Hiddleston, every girl's wet dream. Apparently, I keep getting told this and I don't get it.
He screen tested. He screen tested for Thor. He was almost actually Thor, which would have been even weirder.
He's so scraggly. I've seen him. I haven't seen shirt off pictures. And he's not really.
I've seen the test footage of him as Thor. It looks weird. He's very skinny.
So he's Loki.
He's
Loki.
Amazing. He's conniving. He's
in this. Okay, here's the thing. Loki gets better over time.
Yeah.
I do not like Loki in general for an Avengers. After that, when they start to really write it better,
when he gets really a character, when he actually gets character.
It's one of the few things in Thor: The Dark World that I really like is Loki's arc.
Yeah,
Loki's really good in that. Otherwise, don't watch Dark World, please. It's just don't waste your time.
People think Iron Man 2 is the worst MCU movie. Fuck off. No.
Dark World. No. Sorry. Chemistry with Natalie Portman, my ass.
Yeah, Sam Rockwell in any movie does not make it the worst movie ever made. Fuck off.
But anyway, so Tom Hiddleston is Loki. He commands an army of the Chitauri, who is given into spoiler alert, by Thanos. And that, by the way, this was not the first film in the MCU to give us a post-credit scene, but gave us our first look at Thanos.
Yeah. And I remember sitting in theaters watching that. I remember Thanos popping up and going, "Holy fucking shit. Are they actually going to do this? Are they actually like is this what is actually going to lead up to?" And we got it.
So I love this film. The visual effects are beautiful. The score, Alan Silvestri's score. I talked last week briefly about how, like Superman, John Williams' score really just undertoned everything. And it felt like the music was talking to you and pulling you along. This does the same thing, especially with the Avengers theme.
I think my biggest issue is that the Avengers theme is pretty much the only theme that really does that in the movie. Like they use it a lot and to good effect, and I enjoy it. But like there's not really, other than Black Sabbath, there's not a Iron Man theme. There's not a Captain America theme, right? Like eventually we get those themes later on, right? And like Black Panther gets a theme because Ludwig Göransson is the greatest composer probably working right now. But anyway, but yeah, this score is great, but I think that like it is, and it goes into, again, what Whitney Seibold and William Bibiani have been talking about recently, is that these superhero films are very military propaganda pieces. And rewatching the Avengers with that kind of in mind, the score and the way they shoot shield, it's very pro-military, and that is too, whether or not you find that a pro or a con. Like I think it just adds another layer to it that is very, it's very interesting, to say the least, nowadays. Yeah.
So I now, what's fair is we've kind of set this up. We have to put these up against each other, and it's not that one is better.
When you say it's not that one is better than the other, one is very clearly better than the other. I'll give you that. Like the Avengers is, I will say right now, a classic movie. It was only released 8 years ago, but like it will go down as one of the best movies ever made, I think. Like I think it is very clearly one of the best even studio films ever made. Like it is a perfect cohesion of ideas, I think.
Right. But that tone that you get from this idea of the superhero film, this definitely matches each other up
Mhm.
because you've got the introduction of the team, you have the arguing and the infighting between each other, you have a set base that
Yeah.
is really cool. It's very
Yeah.
provable. You have the destruction of said base in the same film, you know, and then you have the big culmination or the reveal that's a problem in Avengers. It's I think the death of Coulson, and in League, it's probably once they realized that Dorian was the double agent.
Yeah.
Once that happened, and they
Yeah.
began to have a focus together. Um, Actually, no, I would say probably the attempted destruction of the Nautilus. I think even more.
Yeah.
There's a bomb
Yeah.
scene where the
Yeah,
Nautilus is
but
sinking.
that's kind of the same. That's Dorian planted though, so that's kind of
Yeah,
the same. That's kind of the same sequence. So
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
But yeah, I
and
would.
they hit that, and then they have to come together. They have to get figure out where are we going, what's going to happen. I don't know where we're going to go, and they
Yeah.
have to work together to figure it out. Both films do that.
Yep.
They have to figure it out and fix everything. And then we're gonna have one final match, or one final fight in the end against the bad guys. The difference is that the League kills off our bad guy.
Yeah.
Avengers does not, which
We,
it works in that
and I
case.
think they learn based. I think that's something they learn from, especially with like early Marvel movies. Even like you look at like one from Stephen Norrington himself, Blade, because he was the original director of Blade, was he not? Like he killed off Deacon Frost right away. So like you could keep. It was just the idea that you just kill off these bad guys. Even Marvel had an issue with that for the longest time. Loki was the only reason Loki came back is because he's pretty much the only one they didn't kill off starting in the first phase of
Yeah.
the Marvel movies, right? Like all the rest of their villains were gone. So it's like I think they were starting to learn that it's like they need to build and they need to continue to use
The
villains.
formula for each of these teams is very similar as well. You have Quartermain and Tony. I earned Quartermain and Cap, excuse me.
Yeah.
Quartermain and Cap are the leaders, kind of the heart of the team. You have your technological person, which in this case Nemo and League. Your tech guy kind of is Tony. I
Yeah.
think
Oh
Tony
yeah.
fits into your
Yeah.
technology guy. Um,
You Jekyll and Hyde and your Hulk.
yeah,
It's
Jekyll and
very
Hyde. The Hulk
very
is the
easy.
obvious one.
Yeah.
The interesting one to me is that each team at this point only has one female member,
Mhm.
and both are highly sexualized
Yeah.
women. I think
Okay,
that's
so
very interesting.
I'm gonna bring up this now because this was the other one thing that really like stuck out to me this watch was when Bruce turns for the first time on the helicarrier. He hits Natasha away. That's fine, whatever, right? Like he's the Hulk, whatever. But when they confront each other right again, Hulk is like about to backhand Natasha to death. Like that's the scene. Like he is holding his arm up like this, about to backhand Natasha. And watching Firefly and the way Joss Whedon treats women, and like his liberal use of the word whore, and just like and the look that like she like curls up into a ball. And like when Clint comes on, she's like shaking and responds to the radio, right? Like just this position that Whedon puts Widow in this kind of like battered woman position. And then later on, we all want them to get together. In like Age of Ultron, they're like lovey-dovey and they're sweet. And it's like it's this weird domestic abuse thing that's really awkward considering the history of Joss Whedon now. It just felt really strange, and I this is literally the first time I've noticed it, and I've watched Avengers way more than I watched League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, probably like dozens of times now, 100 like 50 times at least, probably.
But yeah, beat for beat, team construction, everything, with the exception, I think, of the score, the visual effects, is pretty much it's the same film.
Yeah.
It really is, except What I think the advantage that Avengers has, besides time and much better visual effects houses, apparently. Don't know how that
All of
works.
them. Well, you get all
Sorry,
of
guys.
them.
Sorry, Edge. Yeah, you
They
never know.
probably had Edge working on them.
Probably somewhere. Yeah, yeah. You see that car that flipped over? That was Edge.
Yeah.
That was that. I don't know. But what you get here
I think it's the
is
pacing is
a
my biggest
matter of
thing.
pacing and
Yeah.
timing.
Yeah.
League of Extraordinary Gentlemen is just under 2 hours.
Mhm.
Avengers a little over 2 hours. But what you're facing is the fact that the League did not have a build-up.
Yeah.
League did not have 5 movies before it. League did not have comic books, which are in the pop culture mainstream. They don't have that.
Well, they had a
books.
comic book, but even then,
Well,
that comic book was a independent comic. It was Vertigo, right? So it's like it's not even it wasn't a mainline a popular comic book,
but Avengers has had time.
Yeah.
Avengers had time to age. So I think that kind of plays to its advantage. Yeah. I'd like to think personally, what would have happened if done properly, even within its time? We could have had these kind of action-based
Alan Quartermain with Sean Connery, and then you do a Tom Sawyer movie where he's like a U.S. Marshal. You do a Mina Harker movie where she's a vampire. Yeah, like build it up to it, right? Like if they,
I think we could have had the same thing as the Avengers. We would have had time to care for these characters, and that's the problem. I said it earlier. As a book lover, I care about these characters. Yeah. Take that away, you don't care. That's the biggest egregious flaw in this. But if you can get beyond that, if you could just look at it for the gun-toting, shooting around, bomb-blowing, vampire-sucking time that it is, then it's a fun film.
Time.
It's a great time. Avengers, unfortunately, is a great time. A great film.
It doesn't stop. Like I think that's my biggest takeaway from the Avengers again, watching it again now, is the pacing. Like it's always, the next scene always moves the story along. There's really no downtime. Like that's where like League takes a couple times to settle down and to like have a little slowdown. The Avengers was like, no, we don't have time for that. We need to go. Shit needs to get done. But so I think that, yes, I think that definitely League of Extraordinary Gentlemen is not as good as the Avengers. That is very clear. That was never the idea. But I think it is a hell of a lot better than 17%. I think it holds up a lot better than people give it credit for, and I think that it deserves another watch. I think people deserve to watch it again.
So yeah, I think that's a fair final thought on it. So next week, I think we need to do something maybe a little more serious. Ooh. Something a little futuristic. Maybe we can do a little running.
Running? Where are we gonna run? What are we running from?
Harrison Ford, apparently.
Oh. And what is Harrison Ford chasing?
I believe he's chasing replicants, AI, or the question of what is humanity. And I think these are some deep thoughts. So what do we put up against the great Blade Runner? There's something fell again. The great Blade Runner. What do we put up against Blade Runner? I think we've got to look at something that tries to do the same thing, but has that much more action-packed. Blade Runner is a slow burn, and we'll talk about that next week. But we need something with a fast burn. Maybe a robot of some kind.
Yeah. So,
maybe starring Will Smith.
Yeah. I think iRobot with Alan Tudyk and Will Smith
against the great Blade Runner. And you know what, we should specify, I think. Are we going to do the director's cut or original theatrical release for Blade Runner? It makes a difference.
It does. See, I prefer the final cut as a cut. But
so next week, Blade Runner final cut up against Will Smith in iRobot.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Chris. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us again for episode 2 of Candy Corn Cinema. Join us next week when we pit robot against robot.